Welcome back to RGES Algebra 2, Lesson 32A, and this will be part 2, and we'll be introducing two new ideas. They will be found in 9.4 and 9.5 of your textbook, and the first one, now remember we're in this chapter, again, about quadratic equations, and we've talked about solving them by binomial factors. We've talked about graphing them. We know how to solve them by binomial factors, which is what you did last time, and that was a review section entirely. Now, there's two other ways that we can solve them, so I'm going to be combining the teaching of the next two sections. Two other ways, so we can solve by binomial factoring, which we just did in the last section, or we can solve by quadratic formula. Okay, now the first one was found, again, a review lesson in 9.3. The quadratic formula is going to be in 9.5. That's also review, I believe. And then the solving the by completing the square is in 9.4. So what if you had something like this, and you had x squared plus 6x equals negative 5? And I know, just by thinking about it, if I did this, I would go x squared plus 6x plus 5 equals 0. Okay. And 5 and 1 would be x plus 5, x plus 1. So I could have actually done this this is a bad example, because I could have done this by just binomial factoring, but let's say I did not want to. Let's go all the way back to here. I recognize that this is something that can be split in two. Do you remember when you had, let's say, x plus 3 and you square it? First term, so I would get x squared. Outer and inner, I would get 3x plus 3x, or plus 6x. And last terms would be 9. Well, I've already got two of those terms, don't I? So if I had a plus 9, let me go ahead and actually write that in a different color so you see what's going on here. If I have plus 9 here, then this would factor to that, right? Well, let's go see what's happening on the other side. I had a minus 5, but if I'm going to add a plus 9 on the left side, I better add a plus 9 on the right side. And negative 5 plus 9 is 4. So now I've already done this as something squared. Isn't that interesting? So if I take the square root of both sides, I would get x plus 3 equals plus or minus 2. Isn't that interesting? This is kind of a slick way to solve it, isn't it? So then if you take the 3 over, I would get x equals negative 3 plus 2, or x equals negative 3 minus 2. So this answer would be negative 1 or negative 5. And that's my answer. So that's called completing the square. Let's go ahead and do it again. Okay, now to set up what I had the last time, I kind of worked backwards, but what is half of this is 1, and 1 times 1, okay, so I'm thinking, this is what you're thinking, 1/2 of 2x, right? Or 1/2 of just the numerical part, even. 1/2 of 2 equals 1, and 1 squared equals 1. Now, how does that help me? So I'm going to think x squared plus 2x plus 1 equals 168 plus 1. So factor the left side, and you get x plus 1 squared. Does that make sense? Make sure, FOIL it, make sure x squared, outer and inner is plus 2x, last term is plus 1, so that's good. Okay, 168 plus 1 is 169. Square both sides, take the square root of both sides, and you're going to get x plus 1 equals plus or minus 169. So take that over, you're going to get negative 1 plus or minus 169. Writing it a little bit different here, okay? I'm thinking to my mind, negative 1 plus 169 is 168. Negative 1 minus 169. You know what, I forgot this. I did a crucial mistake here, I'm sorry. I hope you saw what I did wrong. It's always good if you can catch the teacher. The square root of 169 is not 169, it's 13. Now try it. Negative 1 plus 13 is 12, or negative 1 minus 13 minus 14. And that's how it works. I think we better do another problem. First thing I need to do is take half of this and square it. So on the left side, I want x squared, copy this whole thing, minus 12x plus 36 equals 189 plus 36. This becomes my factor, x minus 6 squared. Convince yourself by foiling first terms, x squared, outer and inner, minus 6x is minus 12x. Last term, negative times negative is positive. 6 times 6 is 36. Always do that step, please. Okay? You will save yourself lots of grief. Go ahead and adding these up, and we're going to get 225. Taking the square root of both sides, I'm going to get x minus 6 equals the square root of 225 plus or minus 15. Take that to the other side, x equals 6 plus or minus 15. How do I get my two answers? First I say 6 plus 15, that's 21. Or 6 minus 15, that's negative 9. Whoops, try to write it. Let's see. Negative 9. 9. There we go. So I think you'll have fun doing those. I don't think those are too complicated. Now, I'm only going to ask you to do the ones that don't get into the fractions. We could do those, but I'm trying to get you to do the main ideas. So I'm going to have you do 1 through 12 all, as well as the two-word problems for that. Now let's go on to the next idea. The next idea is actually also, I think I remember that this next idea on 9.5 is review for you. And this is solved by quadratic equation. Do you remember the quadratic equation? I'm hoping I'm not getting you confused with the Algebra 1. I know they've done this. But the quadratic equation simply says x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And you should say that to yourself until you've got it memorized. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Say it about 10 times to yourself. And this is called the quadratic formula. Now, what do the a, b, and c stand for? Well, the general formation of a quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So if I had a quadratic equation, and let's say I had 3x squared minus 2x plus 7 equals 0. This is my a. This with the sign is my b. Always carry the sign with it. And this is my c. So to figure out if I don't want to factor it, or I can't easily factor it, and I don't want to complete the square, maybe it just looks too complicated, what do? Let me come back up to the top here. What did I say? I said a equals 3, b equals negative 2. B equals negative 2, and you see I'm getting that right off the equation, and C equals 7. What do? You write your quadratic formula. X equals, don't remember the quadratic formula, there we go. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and plug in for a, b, and c. This always works. This technique always works for a quadratic equation. So what are my values? Be negative, negative. A negative, negative is a positive. So this will be 2 plus or minus the square root of, what is b squared? 4 minus 4 times what's a? So what's c? All over 2 times a. What's a? 2 times a. Just like that. Do a little arithmetic. 12 times 7 is 84. Whoops, I'm sorry. All over 6. Do a little cleaning up. Negative 80. We'll talk about that here. Okay, what is 80? That'll be 2 times 40, which is 2 times 20, which is 2 times 10, which is 2 times 5. Another way I could look at that is 8, is that, right? 8 times 10. So this goes forward, and this becomes, running out of room, that's a problem because I don't want to go to the next page. Let me write it down here real quick so I can pick this up on the next page. Okay, I'm trying to simplify this. This is 8 times 10. I'll go ahead and write it out again. 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. 10 is 2 times 5. We'll pull out 2 of those. This had a negative sign in front of it. Don't lose that. This becomes 2 plus or minus. We're pulling out 2 times 2 or 4. We're pulling out the negative sign as an I. Remember that? Square root of 5 all over 6. Now because this and this and this all divide evenly, right, by 2, we're going to get 1 plus or minus 2i, the square root of 5. I tend to write that actually 2 square root of 5i. Okay, so either one, depends on the book you kind of are trained with. And divide the bottom, and x equals this. Now notice that represents 2 values. What do you mean it represents 2 values? Well, I have 1 plus 2i, the square root of 5 over 3, and 1 minus the square root of 2i, or 2i, the square root of 5 over 3. Okay, 2 values. So let me show you another one of those. This is, again, how do I use the quadratic formula to solve a quadratic equation? So my next one will be 6x squared, x plus 15. You must set it to 0. Pull everything to the left side so I have my general form. What does that mean? A equals 6, B equals -1, and C equals -15. Write the quadratic formula. I'll do that over on the top of the next line here. X equals -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I'm going to put it on pause, substitute all three of those values, and do some arithmetic. You try it. Now when I get down to this stage, the square root of 3621, I needed to do that. I kind of could guess, but I needed that. Do it with a calculator, so pick that up. These should all come out evenly. Okay. Pick up your calculator, that's 19. So now what do? Okay, 1 plus 19 is 20 over 12, or 1 minus 19 is -18 over 12. Now you just simplify these. They both divide by 4 in this case, and so you're going to get 5/3, or here they're both going to divide by 6, and you're going to get -3/2. And that's the way we do it. This is generally students enjoy solving by quadratic equation as long as you've memorized the formula. All right, so let's talk about your homework. So we'll review these on Wednesday. Go ahead and make sure they're done. Now, I cannot overemphasize the need to keep going and finish up these last few sections strong. You'll have Wednesday's tape, 32B. You'll have 2 lessons next week, and then you'll have the last week of class, which will be review for the final exam, which will cover everything from the semester on, and I'll be doing 2 tapes of review with you, and then you'll have to take your final. So if you have sections that you truly are very confused about, right now's the time to be communicating that with me. And we will be reviewing week 33, okay? I'm sorry, week 34. So we have this week, next week with new ideas, just a few more new ideas. And then a week of review and your final. If you are running behind, if you are confused, if you feel like there's a problem with this, you look forward to the final and there's one particular area, please, Mrs. Kinzer, review this for me. Make sure you text me. Okay, God bless. Have a wonderful day.